This is the story of Peter Stursberg, a Canadian war correspondent of the Second World War. Arthur Louis Peter Stursberg was born on August 31st, 1913 in Chifu, China. When he was only 11, he moved to Great Britain where he attended a boarding school. Several years later, he moved to Canada with his parents where he graduated from West Hill High School in Montreal. He entered McGill University in 1930 and studied science while working for the McGill Daily newspaper. Peter Stursberg landed his first newspaper job with Victoria Daily Times in 1934 as agricultural editor. In 1938, he traveled throughout Europe as he was interested in the turmoil and conflicts. His visits included France, Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and the Soviet Union. While in Moscow, Russia, he witnessed a parade in Red Square. The Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin, was present at the event. After the outbreak of the Second World War, Peter Stursberg returned to Canada and was hired almost instantaneously by the CBC News in Vancouver. The reporter's first wartime assignment was to cover the building of the Alcan Highway, which would bring weapons and manpower from the continental United States through Canada and then into Alaska. This would serve to protect the territory from Japan. Peter Stursberg was then chosen as one of 6 Canadian reporters to go overseas and cover the war from the front lines. His first assignment was to cover the movement of the Canadian forces in North Africa. They were connected to the UK forces. He then began his coverage of the Italian campaign. In this photo, the reporter sits on a jeep while in Italy. Stursberg saw action in Sicily as he stood with the Canadian forces while they were under fire. In this next clip, you'll hear original work of Peter Stursberg as he narrates a battle in Italy. The full broadcast is available on the CBC website. This is just a clip of approximately 50 seconds.
The attack on the Adolf Hitler line has begun. Canadian infantrymen and the Canadian and British tanks are now storming its outer defenses. Our troops are being supported by one of the heaviest artillery concentrations of this war. Hundreds of guns have been massed in the Leary Valley here for this attack, which is on a very narrow front. Just listen to those guns roar. We're in the attic of an old Italian farmhouse that overlooks the front as it's on a slight ridge. I'm standing here looking out of a hole in the wall that was made by a shell during the fighting there.
In this photo, Canadian forces march past the historical Roman Colosseum. I recently had a chance to see this ancient structure for myself while on a school trip during the March break with the EF Tours group. My great-uncle, Eugene Leslie McKinnon, served through the Italian campaign with the 8th Nouveau-Brunswick Hussars. He visited Rome as well, and he survived the Italian campaign and the war. With the liberation of Italy, it was time to move on to Belgium, Holland, then finally into Germany. 2 of my great-uncles aided in the liberation of Belgium and Holland. They were Donald McKinnon and Leslie McKinnon. After the liberation of Holland, Dutch citizens surrounded the Canadian forces in celebration. Some even climbed on Peter Stursberg's jeep. In his work, the reporter commemorated the Canadian forces and their commander, General Felix, for their liberation efforts and for their negotiations to help feed the starving Dutch people. Only once the war had ended did the reporter have the chance to visit Berlin, Germany. Stursberg was guided by the Soviet army through Hitler's private bunker, quoting, "I thought I might as well take something." The reporter took a fork, and a spoon with the initials AH on one of them. He kept the two souvenirs and later displayed them on a television broadcast. His next job was to work as the CBC News' correspondent with the United Nations. Once finished at the UN, he became an editor for the Toronto Star. Stursberg then became a founder of the CJOH News, which is now owned by the CTV. His investment kept him financially stable for the rest of his life. Peter Stursberg wrote 14 novels in his lifetime, including The Sounds of War, the memoirs of a CBC correspondent. No Foreign Bones in China. Diefenbaker, leadership gained 1956 to 1962. Once retired, he taught Canadian studies at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver from 1982 until 1988. Peter Stursberg received the honor of being named a member of the Order of Canada in 1996. The accomplished author, professor, and journalist died last year at the age of 101 on his birthday. He was the last living Canadian war correspondent of the Second World War. While in Ottawa participating in Forum for Young Canadians, I briefly toured the Canadian War Museum and was astonished by it. I will without a doubt return to properly visit the entire exhibition. Thank you for viewing my presentation.